and we will be doing something which is pretty interesting here, right? We will try to make it as interactive. The only constraint is we know that it's a 1 hour session, so we might not be able to cover everything, right? But then the idea of this session is to make you guys do a take you guys through the like in terms of the backend workings of a model like a LLM, right, which generally powers a GenAI kind of an system, right? So before we begin, I just wanted to check how many of you guys have some understanding of Python. Some understanding of Python. How many of you? Yes, you will get the recording for sure, Vishal. So, but just wanted to check, is it's completely okay if you guys do not know Python. That's not a prerequisite. But then the intent is also to show you some of the workings, and that cannot be done without running some Python codes. I'm very sorry for that, but yes, that's part of the session. But then if you guys are not aware, it's completely fine. I will be sharing the notebook with you, and I will basically walk you through the entire code base, and you can basically play with this notebook, and you can do things on your own, right? So you don't need to really worry that I need to know everything about Python and all of that. I will obviously give you a walkthrough. So, but then it would be really interesting enough to basically push you guys to start learning Python, because we want to learn this particular concept, not from a point of view of just running something and that's it. I would also want to show you the back end of how these models work, right? So I think that's the interesting uh, the part of it, because I'm sure all of you guys use ChatGPT, right? How many of you guys use a ChatGPT or a Gemini or maybe a Copilot? Only Hemant. I only see Hemant. Mansavi, ChatGPT, Copilot. All of you guys. Black box AI. Yep, sure. So, have you ever wondered like how these models work? I'm sure like each one of you, when you write a prompt or write a query in the chat GPT prompt, it gives you a lot of answers, and sometimes the answers are quite elaborate, sometimes it's precise, and quite recently OpenAI has also launched chat GPT 5, and it seems to be better than ChatGPT 4, because obviously it has been trained on a very large on of parameters, like more than what it is trained in ChatGPT 4. But at the same time, if you have seen the comparison, like you can just do this by yourself. Like you can open ChatGPT and choose the model by which you can return the answers. So you will see GPT-5 is much more precise. So it will not give a very long answer, because it's trying to save, because every word which gets generated has puts a lot of additional cost, and it's not something a very cheap model. But on the other hand, ChatGPT 4 is something which is very elaborate. So they're trying to make the model more precise in terms of what the answers it gets generated. So the idea is to also get an understanding of how these models work in the backend, right? So the that's what we would be trying to do today, right? So I will try to give you a glimpse of how these models work, right? And you will see that how intelligent these models are, and what are the different types of these models. So I will obviously give you a basic understanding, will not directly deep dive into the code. So I will give you a glimpse of what generative AI is, what is LLM, what basically we mean when we are talking about a large language model. So we'll try to talk about some of the interesting use cases that is happening in the industry, and then I will show you and walk you through the code, right? So okay, so basically, before I get started, uh, I would want to ask you a question, right? So what do you like, what's your interpretation of Gen AI? So when you hear the word Gen AI, what is the interpretation of what is the interpretation from your side? What do you think? It's part of AI. So please pin yourself for everyone. So sure, I'm not. Let me do that. Let me do that. If I can pin myself. Okay, so I pinned myself, and that's yeah. I'm sure that I think that helps. So yeah, okay. So I see things like data science. I see things like Chat GPT. It's like AI which can work on data. So there are a lot of things which you guys are saying. So it's partly correct, but I will try to give you an understanding and also give you a bit of history, right? So I think like in the last couple of years, we are all talking about ChatGPT and about large language models and all of that. But let me also try to give you a glimpse of how this has been, right? So so I will share my screen and let me know if it's visible to all of you. Let me just show you that fine. Okay, so let me know if you guys can see my screen. So I plan to make it as interactive as possible. So I don't have a lot of presentation prepared, but then we'll go through the things from scratch. Okay. So let's start with a proper definition of generative AI. Okay, and how generative AI has evolved, like how it has come up into the recent picture, right? So way back in 1950s, right? We generally had rule-based systems, right? So basically, 1950s, 1960s, wherever any sort of algorithms that we had, they were generally rule-based. So when I say rule-based, so it's like you can think of any sort of business rules, any sort of logical rules, and based on that rule, a certain output would get generated, right? Now, fast forward to, let's say, 1990s. This is the time when the initial econometric models comes into picture. So if some of you guys are an economic student, you might have, or I'm sure you should have heard about the term econometrics, which is a combination of economics, statistics, and mathematics, right? So a lot of econometric models came into picture. Now, example of econometric model, if you guys, some of you guys might have heard about, is like a linear regression or a logistic regression, right? So like these are very statistical models. I'm sure everyone has heard about the word statistics. So these are models which relies on certain statistical axioms and certain statistical principles, right? So during this time, a lot of models were driven by statistics. So it's not any sort of machine learning or any sort of any sort of GPT or a GenAI kind of thing. So it was mainly driven by statistics, right? Now, also the thing that was happening till 2000, the companies did not had a lot of computing power, right? And there was not a lot of data that was getting generated, because obviously even there was a data, there was no storage that was happening. There were not of lot of I would say systems to store the data where you can run heavy models and all of that, right? So even though, so imagine, let's say, I know about colleagues who are working in TCS during that time, who used to run an econometric model through pen and paper, right? So literally using pen and paper, they used to solve some mathematical equations and generate some forecast, right? So that was another era, and now when we switched to, let's say, 2010, this was the initial era when machine learning started coming into the picture, right? So when I say machine learning, it's models like a random forest and gradient boosting. So I don't want to overwhelm you guys with a lot of new words, but it's not that like a Chat GPT or a GenAI model has been existing from 2010, right? So this is pretty recent. So what was happening prior to that, right? So there was a lot of tree-based models and a lot of machine learning-based ML models that were there, right? So During that time, and this era continued till I would say 2020. So till 2010 to 2020, a lot of the models were machine learning based, right? Which means companies were using models like random forest, companies were using models like gradient boosting. And what was the use case? It was mostly predictive, right? So the idea was to predict something. So it can be sales of a company, it can be let's say it can be sales of a company. It can be, let's say, if a customer would be there in the company or not. Say if a customer will churn or not, right? It can be even in terms of doing some sort of basic sentiment analysis, right? So it was not that all of this was not happening, but in a much smaller scale, right? Now, it was in 2020 that a pretty much transformation that happened, right? And the first OpenAI, like the GPT-1 model, got uh, was being trained and was launched, right? So it was during around I think 2022, 2023, when people across the globe started knowing about GPT as a platform where you can do give prompts and it can generate some sort of answers, right? So the idea of GenAI, goes back till 2020, 2021. And if you guys really want to, understand the inception of GenAI, so there is a particular paper, if you guys are interested, to read, and I will share the link of this paper in the chat. And this model was basically uh, developed by Google, right? It was in 2017, and the model, the basically the model what was Transformers, right? So it's not the movie; it's definitely the one which was developed by Google, and the name of the paper is "Attention is All You Need," right? So, and I will share the link of this paper. I would request you guys to go through the paper. I think, yes, it is a bit technical, but I think it's the genesis of how, all of these GPT models work, right? So I've just shared the link of the paper in the chat, and just feel free to, download this paper for your own reference. But this paper was launched, if you see, in 2017, right? And it was authored by a lot of very renowned researchers from Google. And this was the first time when a generative model was trained, right? So till 2020, just to summarize, most of the models that we were dealing was focusing on prediction, right? So as I mentioned, the use cases were like you want to forecast sales, you want to predict like whether a customer will be there in the organization or not, or let's say you want to understand what are the factors influencing the profit of your organization, right? So all of this can all of these things was the prime importance. It is not that right now all the companies are only doing generative AI. It's definitely not that. The majority of the companies are still focusing on predictive AI or still focusing on traditional set of models to work upon, right? But then definitely, the pace at which generative AI has grown in the last couple of years is humongous, and it is expected to grow, right? It's not something which will remain or which will grow in a static space. It will actually grow in an exponential pace, and that is why we are here. That is why we are trying to learn about it. So, but I give you a glimpse of how generative AI, the journey, right? So the journey of different models and how we are looking at generative AI, and there's always a wave, right? So there will be some other wave which might be coming, but it is in this point of time when the first models were trained, right? And now there are models from Meta, right? So Meta has its own uh, large language models, which is like LLaMA and Palm. Then we also have models from Google. So Gemini is a model from Google, right? Then we also have obviously OpenAI. So OpenAI has ChatGPT. But anyone knows what's the full form of GPT? Any guesses? What's the full form of GPT in ChatGPT? Any guesses? What is GPT stands for? What do you think? Anyone? Ankit mentions generate prompt text. I think that's what you meant, Ankit. Generative prompt text, generative pre-trained transformers. Okay. So yes, actually, when we say GPT, it's actually generative pre-trained models, right? It's not only transformers. So transformer is one of the models, but it's not that transformer is the only model that is used in the backend. So there are other sort of models. Just to give you some names, if you want to explore. So there are models like GANs. GAN stands for Generative Adversarial Networks. We have transformers. We have also VAEs or variational autoencoders. So these are, that's also some of the models. So there are, different companies or different tech organizations use different models, right? So GPT basically stands for Generative Pre-trained Model. So, uh, a GPT is basically trained on billions and billions of unlabeled data. So, which is very important to note, and I will write it here that a GPT, a generative pre-trained model, is trained on an unlabeled data. So, everyone understands what unlabeled data is. Everyone understands what unlabeled data is. I will tell you. I'm sure like some of you guys might have a question on this. So basically, in context of any sort of machine learning problem, we generally have a y variable which we define as a dependent, and we generally have an x variable, right? So we simply say to put it very simply, we say y is a function of x, so y equals to fx, right? Which means that using x, which means using certain inputs, I can predict a y, right? So imagine, let's say you want to predict if a customer will churn out of a company or not, right? So an outcome of that can be an 1 0 sort of a variable. One means the customer has churned out, and zero means the customer has not churned out, right? So so this is an example of a label data, right? So we have a label, which means we know that we have a historical data where we have an understanding whether the customer has churned or not, right? So that is what we define as label data. But a GPT sort of a model has been trained on an unlabeled data, right? So it has been trained on you know billions of parameters, including what is available publicly available in the web, right? It can be on books, right? It can be in PDFs, whatever, right? So it's unlabeled data, and that's where these models are a bit different because they are generative, right? They are not predictive, which means it is not predicting that what is the sales of a particular company, right? Or it is not predicting whether customer will churn or not. It is just generating, right? So if you are giving a prompt, it is generating based on whatever prompt you are trying to give, right? So that is what the distinct attribute of a GPT model is, that it's generative in nature, right? So it is trying to generate something, and how it is trying to generate based on the historical data uh, that it has been trained upon, right? So just to give you a glimpse of how this exactly how just to give you a glimpse of how this model works, right? So I will give you a very simple example, right? So imagine, let's say I mentioned that you know let's take a statement: I am feeling right. I'm feeling very okay, and this is a dash, which means I do not know what this word is. Okay, now this can be any word, right? It can be I am feeling very happy. It can be I am feeling very sad. I am feeling very tired. I am feeling very excited. It can be any sort of word. Agree? Everyone agrees to this, right? So it can be any sort of word, you know. So the idea of what what a GPT model does is basically, imagine, let's say it will try to predict n set of words, right? So it can be happy, it can be sad, right? It can be tired, whatever, excited, whatever. So imagine, let's say there are n set of words here. and every word is basically assigned a probability, right? So let's say this happy has a probability of zero point 0.8, sad has a probability of, let's say, zero point 0.6, whatever, and so on. So every word is assigned a probability, and that particular word is chosen, right? Which has the maximum probability. So let's say happy has a maximum probability. The next word which GPT might tell is happy. Okay. So now the point is, how does the model is giving happy the highest probability? So this is basically happening through historical data, right? So it has been trained on a lot of historical data, and that is why you will see that a GPT might be good in a lot of things, but it is not something which is well updated, right? So if you ask a chat GPT that, can you tell me what is happening in Ukraine just right now, right? So it can give you some search results in terms of some links of of news channels or whatever, but it cannot summarize and tell you that what exactly is happening in Ukraine right now, right? Because it has been trained at a point in time, right? It has been trained at a point in time. So that point in time can be, let's say, 2024, 2023, 2022, whatever, right? So obviously the latest GPT model will be trained with the most recent data, but it is trained in a point in time. Okay. And based on that training, it basically is trying to reason and generate certain thoughts, right? So um, so in totality of it, what is a generative AI? So generative AI is basically is a form of AI, right? It's definitely a form of artificial intelligence which can be used to generate any sort of data, which can be even text, which can be even images, which can be even videos, or even it can be synthetic data, right? So it's not only restricted to text, right? You can even generate images, videos, even speech. You can generate. So you can do all sort of things with the generative AI. Whereas a lot of people get confused between LLMs and generative AI. So LLMs, which stands for large language models, are more focused on text, right? So obviously generative AI started with text. So it's not that it started with images or videos. It has expanded to images and videos, but it basically started with text, right? So the idea is that using to also understand the difference between an LLM versus a generative AI. That in generative AI, it's a more of an umbrella term, right? Which basically refers to any sort of thing, any sort of models which is used for generating a particular data, whereas LLM is like the backend model which can be used specifically for text. Uh, you can use a particular sort of like a model, right? So the idea is that whenever we are trying to use a GPT, right? So always understand that any of these companies like a Meta or a Google or a OpenAI, in fact. So any of these companies are basically using a lot of data, right? And that is why Meta in the recent times has become so powerful in terms of running the model, because they have access to a lot of data, right? Because uh, you can basically because it has access to Instagram, it has access to Facebook. Obviously it is not reading the WhatsApp chats, but it has access to a lot of social media data, right? And that is why it can basically work with a lot of data that they have, and generate a lot of contextual answers to any prompts that you are giving, right? But at the same time, guys, it's also important to understand the limitations of generative AI, right? And in this webinar, I only do not want to speak great about generative AI, and this is the end of the world and we are only doing generative AI. No, we should also be aware of some of the limitations, and as practitioners, or as someone who aspires to become an expert in generative AI, you should be aware of certain limitations as well. So the first limitation is definitely the model is trained in at a point in time, right? So it is not something which is always updated. So, and that's the reason these models basically what we define as hallucinating, right? So there is a word in generative AI where we say the one of the major limitations of a LLM model or of a generative AI model is to hallucinate, right? Now, what is hallucinate? What does hallucinate? What is the meaning of hallucination? So basically, when the model is not correct, but it will still try to give you a response, and you can even accept that answer as a true response, right? Which is not ideal, correct? So the like ChatGPT can tell you any answer, right? And some of the times it might not be the case that all the answers it is giving is exactly 100% correct, right? So there can be errors in that, and that is what hallucination means, which means the model cannot reason well. The model cannot or the model can get very weird or wrong answers or incorrect answers, right? So that is what hallucination means. So that is one of the first limitations of a Gen AI, right? The second is something which we all know in the hindsight is that a large language model or a chat GPT can give you some very broad level answers, right? So you can, if you give a if you search a code, or let's say if you are searching that give me a strategy to do this, it can give you broad level answers, but it cannot give very specific answers, right? So let's say you're working for a pharma company, right? And you want to analyze your own data. So ChatGPT cannot give you an answers to the data that you are owning, right? Because that data is not something on which the model is trained, right? So basically, that is the problem where it loses the context, right? And a lot of times it does not have an exposure to the local context, right? So when I say context, I mean the local context, which means let's say you're working for like let's say a pharma company or a CPG company. Let's say you're working for Nestle, right? And you want to analyze like how Nestle products are doing. It cannot give you an answer because it is not trained on that, right? It can give you some broad level answers and all of that, you know. So so these are some of the limitations that you guys should also be aware of, like like generative AI has also its own limitations, right? And the third and the most important thing, which also I want to use, is something called responsible AI, right? So in the field of data science, in the field of AI, all the I'm very sorry of my very bad handwriting, but all the leaders in the industry are also concerned about how responsible the AI is, right? So whether the answer which you are getting is correct or not, whether it has some sort of bias, right? Whether it has been trained on some sort of data which is exposed to a bias, right? And if you are tracking the news, right? So there are a lot of times where New York Times has sued OpenAI, that it is only giving certain form of answers, right? So the fairness, whether the models are biased or unbiased, is also something that we as practitioners of AI should be well aware of, right? So which means that if a chat GPT is giving me a certain answer, is it fair? Is it unbiased, right? Or is it biased based on certain data which it has been trained upon, right? So these are the three important limitations. The first being hallucination, which means the model is not trained constantly and it can hallucinate, it can give you incorrect answers. The second, it is might not reason well with a very local context which you might have. And the third is about being fair enough, being the model being unbiased, right? So these are some of the limitations which generative AI has. And as you guys will be learning more about it, I would also want you guys to be aware of it, right? And now, another thing, just to be aware of, that when we are talking about any of these models, right, like a GPT or a LLaMA model, they have been trained with billions of parameters. So to give you some numbers, a ChatGPT model has been trained with 175 billion parameters, which is huge, right? So which means it is a pretty costly model. It's not something, it's open, right? Which means we all can use it, but it is pretty expensive in a way, right? So training these models requires a lot of data, a lot of parameters, and a lot of computing cost. And that is why only few companies also go for the the premium versions or the pro versions of a GPT, right? But definitely this is something which is very evolving. Every other day a new model is coming, every other day a new research paper is coming, right? And there are a lot of use cases, right? So there are companies which are making their ads with generative AI, right? So you will see a lot of companies coming with some ads. I think there is a recent ad of Mazda, where there is a I think there are two celebrities. I don't remember the names, but the ad is about you can put your photo in the app in the app, right? And it can generate your avatar or a generative AI image with a catchy slogan and all of that, right? So what it is at the end of the day, it's just a marketing strategy, but it's not a traditional marketing strategy. It's a very personalized marketing strategy, right? So that you can upload your own photo and create a story. So how it is possible? Something through generative AI, right? So they have a model at the end, and it just generates a avatar of you uh, using generative AI, right? The trend of Ghibli, which came, like everyone was doing Ghibli, and it was everyone was trying to generate their Ghibli avatar, right? So all of that are these real use cases which is happening in terms of generative AI. So we are trying to summarize. We are using it to summarize the documents. We are using it to generate new contents. We are using it to create new strategies for the C-suite and all of that. So there are endless use cases that is happening, and a lot of companies are right now in that wave to adopt more and more, right? So obviously, knowing about just not knowing about generative AI as users, also knowing about it as in the in form of the backend, in terms of like what models are used, what is the difference between, let's say, an LLM and a generative AI. It gives you a lot of additional clarity about how the space is evolving, right? I will take a pause for a moment, but I just wanted to check if you guys were following, if you guys have any questions, any thoughts, because as I said, I want this session to be as interactive. Yes. So Zibran, exactly. So RAG can help basically whenever we have a problem of a local context, we can use a retrieval augmented generation, right? Which can basically help to add the context, right? So and I see a bit of questions about the AI agent session. So we will have that session as well, right? So you don't worry, we will have that session as well. So and you will be informed, right? So so this session is about generative AI. Don't get confused. Okay. So now AI agent, just to also, like, we are not going into the AI agent topic, but in terms of agentic AI, that's the next I would say evolution from generative AI. So agent is nothing but it can work for you as a personal agent, right? So it can visit websites, it can query things, it can generate reports. So imagine, let's say you have a personal assistant, and you ask that personal assistant to do five sort of tasks, and agentic AI can actually do all sorts of all these five tasks for you, right? So that's the next wave of things which is coming, right? And we will have a dedicated session for agentic AI as well, right? But then I hope you guys got an idea, got an overview about what generative AI is in terms of how it evolved, what it refers to, how it differs from LLM, and what are some of the major limitations of generative AI. Like I wanted to give you that glimpse before I show you some hands-on. But any questions or confusions on that? Did you guys got a clarity, right? Yes, so we will do the hands-on on interior designing. That's the next part, right? Sorry, there is something. Right? But did you guys? Can we get a key point on what we completed in this session? So yes, so Rohit, just to summarize, so we started with what's the evolution of generative AI, right? How the models, how has this been entire journey? Second, we described what the generative AI, right? Third, we also discussed about what are the different use cases, what are the different models, and fourth, we also discussed about what are some of the limitations uh, that generally happens when working with Gen AI sort of models. Yeah. You will get the certificates. Don't worry. I think certificate is just the end part, but I think the more interesting part is about uh, the key takeaways that we're having from this session. So, are you guys ready to see some hands-on, like how we can use generative AI, and and guys, do not okay, just ensure like okay. Okay, so now, so for that, I will stop sharing my screen for a moment, and I'll reshare my screen. So just a moment. I will reshare. Okay, so I will tell you what we are trying to do before we actually go through the the case. Okay, so I think it's good to have that understanding first. So what we're trying to do, guys, is that we will use a generative AI or a GenAI app, right? So it will use OpenAI and Gemini. So I mentioned that OpenAI has GPT, which is the best model, and Gemini is like the model which is being trained by Google. So we can use any of these. Basically, this code is more upon using the OpenAI or the GPT model, right? And what it does, so it's basically an app. So it's a Streamlit app. So Streamlit is like a platform which where you can build some drop downs and you can run. So there's a Streamlit app where which can basically generate a floor plan, right, or a design the floor plan. So imagine, let's say you are an engineer, and you want to generate a floor plan, sorry, using certain features, and this can be like I want to generate a floor plan for the living room, and I have, let's say, I have an understanding of what the length of the room will be, what the width, what could be the furnitures sitting in the room, right? And also some kind of style. Let's say it should be in black and white. It can be in let's say in minimal color sketch. It can be in hand drawn sketch, and I want that plan, right? So I want the model to tell me that, right? So we will be doing that, and we will try to generate some iterations of different room types based on certain user inputs, right? So it's like giving a prompt, but it is very specific to this plan generator in terms of floor plan, right? It's not a typical chat GPT model that you have seen. So it is very specific in terms of generating. And the idea of showing you this is that we can, mold this code to anything, right? To, let's say, we are doing it for a floor plan generator, but this can be molded to, let's say, if you want to, design a cafe, or let's say if you want to design a content on let's say on some sort of brand launch, right? So you can do all of that. So that's the idea. So let me but I hope you guys got the essence of it, right? I hope you guys got the essence of it, like what we are trying to do. Anyone? Any questions on that? Was it clear? I hope what we're trying to do. How AI is used in data analysis. Anshika, I'll try to respond to that question. But let's go through the code once and then we can have it. Okay. So I will share my screen, guys, and let me know if you guys can see my screen. Um, Okay, maybe I will share my task. Yes. Okay, can you see my screen, guys? Is it visible to you guys? Everyone? I hope it is. So, so everyone can see it, right? I'm just seeing the chat box. Guys, and please do not do this on screen. I think it's just that's I think. Okay. Cool. So let me go back. So okay. So yeah. So this is the AI floor plan generator, right? And if you see, I have few options here. We have the room type. So you can select between a living room, bedroom, kitchen, dining, study, kids room, whatever. So we have a lot of options to select. So let's start with the living room. We also have the options to feed in the length and the width, right? So let's keep it as 14 and 12 as it is. Now, let's say I want to add a sofa, a TV unit, coffee table, a bookshelf, and a window with curtains, right? So let's say these are the some of the basic furniture that I would want in my living room, right? And I want to generate the floor plan with a black and white schematic, right? So let's go with this, and I want to add some labeled dimensions, right? So I want to add the dimensions, and I can also add the legend means which is a sofa, which is a TV unit, and all of that, right? So let's this is the basic prompt which I'm giving to the app, right? And I will click on the generate floor plan, right? So what is happening in the backend is it is using the OpenAI model, and it is basically using the prompt in terms of the features that we have. We are giving it for the living room, so it knows that it needs to generate a plan for the living room, right? We have the length and the width, and it says that wow, floor plan is generated. So let's try to look at it. So it's quite a good, right? So if you see, this is how the floor plan is, and let's try to expand the image a bit, right? So we have the sofa. So it's not so great. We have the TV. It tries to also build up some sort of bookshelf here, right? It gives me the dimensions, right? And also the width and the length, right? So it gives me all sort of also that, right? Now let's try to generate something in a different dimension, right? And uh, maybe let's do it for the study. Okay, so in study, let's try to keep it simple. I want a workstation. Okay, I want a workstation with the computer, right, and the chair, right, and the office chair. Okay, uh, let's say the bookshelf. Okay, and let's say I also need. Okay, let's say I need all of this workstation with a computer, a office chair, right, a bookshelf, and a table, right? And let's try to generate with the same schematic black and white, and let's try to generate, and let's see if it works. So it's running. It says it's creating your floor plan. So basically in the backend the model works. Okay, so yeah, it's not bad, right? At the starting. So we have the chair, right? We have the table, right? We have some bookshelf as well. We have the cabinets and all of that. So it's again it's something which it's a typical plan which the engineers use, right? And we can even change the type of this plan, right? So let's try to change this to something uh, instead of schematic black and white. Let's say let's do a modern CAD line, okay? Or let's say it can be a hand drawn sketch, right? So let's see how the model gives me a hand drawn sketch, right? So obviously this will be different from an this is how the hand-drawn sketch looks like. It looks pretty much more neat, right? So you have the chair here, you have the workstation, you have the window, right? This is how the overall workstation looks like. You have the door, right? And you have several bookshelves, and you also have the annotations, right? So you can even download this image and save it, right? So the idea is that I can try with different ideas, and I just do not need to. So again, guys, it is very important. This is something which I always emphasize on, that whenever you are using any sort of model, just do not become only fascinated by, oh, it's a chat GPT, oh, it's a generative AI, it's so good and all of that. No, I think the end game is that you should be looking at what's the value that it is bringing, right? So what's the value add? So how is this serving my purpose, right? It's just not about generative AI, or we are here to study about chat GPT. No, that's not the point. That's the point, is that how it is adding value. So here the point is, so let's say if I'm an engineer, I can basically generate something in a matter of hours, instead of manually doing it in days, right? So it's pretty fast, it's pretty convenient, and it's pretty something to generate something which has which gives me some more ideas, right? So that's the intent, right? So you can play with this, and you can use it for any sort of room type, and you can give the prompt, right? And work through it, right? Now, just to also give you a glimpse of the backend, so just to make you guys understand. So in the backend, what we are doing, so this app that you see, the Streamlit app. So it's like it's an app where you can run very simple web host kind of a thing, right? It's not something which is too fancy. It's something which can be easily customized, and all of this which you see, the room type or length and all of that, it is basically something which can be designed. So you can design the entire width of it, length of it, what should be seen in that drop down and all of that, right? But the most important point is the model which is working. So we're using an OpenAI, and what it does is that it uses the prompts, like whatever we give. It also takes a study. So it's like whatever input we are giving, let's say it's be it living room or a study or a dining, it takes those inputs, and based on that, it tries to generate the image, right? So it's an OpenAI model that we have in the backend that's running, and it uses those inputs to it just so in the backend it's just using those inputs and generating the image, right? So you can basically play with it and generate some more images based on whatever you type. And the idea is here is to simply show you that how easily this code is not even 100 lines. It's very compact, it's very precise, right? And using such a small set of code, you can generate something which is so handy. Yeah. So so I hope you guys appreciated that how using a GenAI. So this is something which is not possible through a machine learning model, right? It is not possible through an statistical model, right? It is something which is only possible through a GenAI model. So it's a Gemini model, which is the Google based model which is running, and you can easily cross check and change all of this, and generate the plan. And you can, as I mentioned previously, you can even save the images. Let's say you want to generate multiple images, you can just change the settings, you can change the prompt, and based on that you can just generate the images very quickly, right? So yeah, I just wanted to show you that how powerful and how easy it's to work with these apps. So you just need to create it. So you just need to have to create that app in the backend, and you can use it for your company, and it can be used to generate a brand. Let's say you want to generate some ad images, or let's say you want to design something in manufacturing plants. All of that can be done. Yeah. But then again, I will take a pause to check if you guys follow it or not. If you guys followed, I would appreciate if you can type in a yes. It would really. Uh, in which application you are doing this, sir? So basically, as I mentioned, we are doing it in Streamlit, right? So Streamlit is like an app. It's if you just Google Streamlit, you will see it's a web-based app. It basically can be easily integrated with Python, right? I'll stop sharing the screen for a moment. Sorry, it's something which can be easily integrated with Python, and the idea is that in the backend, if there is an .py, there's a Python code which is running, right, and the code is using, and in the front end is the Streamlit app, right, that we are seeing, but in the backend we have a .py file, and uh, the uh, the model that we are using, as I mentioned, is a Gemini model, which is right. Yes, exactly. So basically, the idea is that the if you change the prompts, right? If you change the uh, the plant setting, it will basically design and it will generate the images accordingly. So the better the prompts you give, so right, I'm not a designer, right, so I can give very basic prompts, but let's say someone who's a designer can be more creative in in giving the right set of keywords, and when you give those right set of keywords, it can use that and generate much more better and also creative plans, right? Why Python is more easier than in Java? Because in Python, all the models, because these are like deep learning models or GenAI models. So it's Python has been the go-to language since I would say 2015. So most of this is open source, right? So there's a lot of community work which goes into. Uh, and that's why most of the models which gets developed is basically in Python, right? So we need a lot of packages, we need a lot of modules, right, to basically build these things, right? And that is why Python scores the maximum, but I hope you got the idea. So right now, I did not wanted to take you through the backend because it's a bit code intensive. But obviously, I think in the Gen AI courses that we do, we obviously go into the backend and we understand all of it, because a lot of you guys might not be aware of Python, and it will just spoil the I think the entire experience of this session. But then, as I mentioned, the structure of the code is more that once you develop a Streamlit app, then you have the GenAI, the model which is taking the prompt, which you are putting in the Streamlit app, and it is basically generating an image. That's it. Yeah. So I think we are very close to the end of the session. But any other? So it is basically using the Google Gemini model, but it is running locally. Okay. Yes. So yes, it seemed like creating a model using Hugging Space and deploying in Hugging Space. So there, like deploying a model is different. So you can deploy the model in any platform which you want. But there are Gemini, there are models from OpenAI, and you can use any of these models to basically uh, create your content. But I hope you guys got a. Definitely, the session is it's just a 60-minute session, right? And I will be blunt enough that obviously I do not expect like we would be knowing even everything about GenAI in just a 60-minute session. But I hope you got an I would say an overview of what GenAI is. I hope you got an idea of what is happening in the backend, right? So there's obviously a lot of technicalities, there's a lot of details or fine prints, but I hope you got an. So now, from I think the only takeaway which I can mention is that once you are giving now using ChatGPT or giving a prompt, you will have some idea, okay, how the models are running in the backend, right? Not maybe the complete idea, but maybe some sort of idea, right? And also the idea that we can use these models for our own purpose, create something like an app for our own, and generate things. Yeah. So yeah, so thank you all. I have a hard stop. Sorry, at 7:30. I have another call to join, but the idea would be to practice. You will be getting the certificates, so you don't worry. I think you will get the certificates, but I think more important is if you guys do a bit of research, read the paper, or attention is all you need. I think that's a very interesting paper. I expect everyone to read about it, and and happy learning. I think you'll also get the code, so that will be shared. Don't worry. So we will try to have some other session on prompting. So prompting is a specific is a specific area as well, right? So I think it cannot be talked about in a couple of minutes. So we'll try to arrange something like that. Okay, you will get it, Jatin. All of you guys, you will get the certificates. I think it has been mentioned by the admin, so it will be mailed to you. Okay, don't worry. Cool. So thank you all. I hope you guys got a good idea about not a good, but I would say fair idea of what generative AI is, how it differs from LLM, what are some of the interesting aspects, right? How the how LLMs and how generative AI is evolved. What are some of the limitations? You guys should be aware of, and then also like the idea of building something which is very local. Right? Yeah, thank you all. I wish you a good day, a good evening, in fact, and all the best. Keep learning. Yeah, see you. Thank you, guys. Take care. Bye bye.